The sun dipped low behind the jagged mountains of Xiron, casting a blood-red glow across the battlefield. The air was thick with smoke, the smell of burning metal and alien technology lingering like a dark cloud. A new day was dawning, but it felt like the last for many. The Xiron galaxy was not a peaceful one. It had been at war for centuries. And now, at this moment, the fate of Xiron and its people rested in the hands of an unlikely hero, a human warrior named Captain Rax. The alien. Species had never fully trusted humans, and Captain Rax was a mystery to many. He was sent to Xiron as part of a fragile alliance between humanity and the alien races. Yet Rax had no idea what fate had in store for him. He had been raised on Earth, trained as a soldier, and hardened by war. He was skilled with weapons, unflinching, in the face of danger, and above all, loyal. But there was one thing Rax did not know. He did not know that he was part of a bigger plan, one that would force him into an ancient connection he had forgotten. Queen Kalaris watched the chaos unfold. From her royal chambers, high in the palace above the city, her violet eyes were sharp, calculating, and filled with the weight of responsibility. She had ruled the Xiron galaxy for decades, but today was different. Today, everything she had fought for would either fall or be secured by the outcome of a battle unlike any other. Kalaris had met Rax only once before, at the summit to form an alliance. She had not liked him. He was a warrior, and she had always believed that warriors were necessary evils. But something about him had intrigued her. His confidence, his strength, his sheer determination had made her curious. She wanted to know more. And now, as she stood on the balcony, looking at the battlefield below, her mind wandered back to that moment. She had never expected to see him again, certainly not in a situation like this. The Human Alliance had brought their finest soldiers to fight alongside the Xiron warriors, but it was clear that the enemy forces were too strong. The battlefield was a blur of chaos, but even in the madness, there was something about Rax that stood out. He fought with a controlled fury, his movements precise like a deadly dance. His body was built for battle, his face set in grim determination. He didn't speak much, but when he did, his voice was like thunder. His presence on the battlefield was something to behold. Kalaris was both intrigued and unsettled by his power. It was undeniable. Rax was a warrior in every sense of the word, but what really caught her attention was how he moved through the chaos. He didn't hesitate, didn't falter. He had a purpose. As Rax moved through the enemy lines, cutting down foes with expert precision, he found himself drawn toward the royal palace. There, in the heart of the conflict, was Kalaris. She stood atop a high platform, overseeing the chaos, with the calm of a seasoned ruler. Her royal guards surrounded her, but Rax couldn't help but notice how the light of the setting sun reflected off her silver armor, making her look like a goddess of war. He had been briefed about the queen, how powerful she was, how ruthless. But he hadn't seen her fight. He hadn't seen her do anything other than rule from a distance. And yet, there was something about her, something in the way she commanded the battlefield that made Rax pause. The queen's eyes met his, and for a moment everything seemed to stop. There was a connection between them, an invisible thread, pulling them toward each other. It wasn't love. It wasn't attraction. It was something deeper, something far more ancient, something neither of them understood. Rax didn't hesitate. He made his way toward her. "Your Majesty!" he shouted, over the din of battle. His voice was strong, cutting through the noise. "The enemy's forces are too strong. We need to retreat and regroup." Kalaris didn't move. She simply stared at him, her gaze unwavering. Her sharp mind was already calculating, already strategizing. But she knew that there was more at play here than just tactics. "Retreat?" she echoed, her voice cold yet powerful. "You think that's the answer?" Rax stood tall, his face grim. "We're outnumbered. We fight another day, or we lose everything." The queen finally moved. She stepped down from the platform, her steps firm and deliberate. She walked toward him, never breaking eye contact. As she reached him, their gazes locked, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though the entire universe had paused. There was a feeling of recognition, something ancient and forgotten. But it passed quickly, and Kylaris shook it off. "I will not retreat," she said firmly, her voice filled with the confidence of a ruler who had never known defeat. "But I will hear your plan. What do you suggest, Captain?" Rax looked her in the eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation. There was none. She was a queen, a leader. She would never show weakness. "We need to strike at their weak point," he said. "I've studied their tactics. There's a supply depot a few miles east of here. If we destroy it, we'll cripple their forces." Kylaris nodded slowly. "You would risk everything on a single strike?" Rax's jaw tightened. "It's our only chance." She studied him for a long moment, then turned to face her generals. Without a word, she gestured for them to prepare for the mission. Rax felt a strange sense of relief, but there was still something about this whole situation that didn't sit right. Why had Kylaris trusted him so quickly? She didn't trust anyone. Not like this. As the two of them prepared for the mission, Rax couldn't shake the feeling that they were being pulled into something far bigger than they realized. There was a connection between him and the queen. He could feel it in his bones. But what was it? Why did it feel like he knew her from somewhere? The two of them worked together seamlessly, their forces moving like a well-oiled machine. Every move they made was calculated, every step taken with precision. They reached the supply depot under the cover of darkness, and the strike was quick and brutal. Explosions rocked the night air, the depot crumbling to the ground. It was a victory, but it came at a cost. As the mission ended, Rax found himself alone, staring at the wreckage of the enemy's supply lines. And then, from the shadows, a voice called out to him. "Captain Rax," a soft voice said. "You're not what you seem." Rax turned sharply, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But it wasn't an enemy. It was Kylaris. The queen stepped into the light, her face more serious than he had ever seen it. "I've been looking into you, Captain. Your past. It's not what you think." Rax frowned, stepping toward her. "What are you talking about?" "There are things about your past that you don't remember," she said, her voice low. "Things you've forgotten." Before Rax could ask any more questions, an explosion echoed through the air, followed by the sound of enemy soldiers approaching. "We don't have time for this," Rax said. "We need to move." But Kylaris was already gone, disappearing into the darkness, leaving Rax with more questions than answers. As the battle raged on, Rax couldn't shake the feeling that this war was only the beginning. There was something hidden about his past, something tied to Kylaris, and soon he would learn just how far this mystery went. But one thing was clear. His fate and the Queen's were forever linked. The night was dark, with only the stars above to light the way. The war on Xiron had reached a critical point. The battle had pushed the soldiers to their limits, but it was far from over. The Queen and her forces had managed to inflict heavy damage on the enemy's supply lines, but now the real war had begun. Rax could feel it in the air. The tension was thick, like a storm waiting to break. Rax had always been a soldier. His life had been about duty, fighting, and surviving. He never asked questions, never wondered about the past. He did what was required, and that was enough. But something had changed since he had met Kylaris. There was an unease deep inside him, a feeling that the answers he had been ignoring were beginning to surface. And they all pointed to the Queen. The explosion from earlier had shaken the ground beneath them. The mission to destroy the enemy supply depot had been a success, but the victory had come at a cost. Rax knew that it would only be a matter of time before the enemy retaliated, and when they did, the situation would only get worse. Rax stood, alone in the war room of the Xiron Palace, looking out over the battlefield. The planet was on the brink of destruction, and yet all he could think about was the strange conversation he had with Queen Kylaris. There was something about her eyes, something that felt familiar. She had spoken to him like she knew him, like she had seen him before, and yet he had no memory of her. He had been trained to fight, to survive, but nothing in his training had prepared him for this. "What do you mean, things I've forgotten?" he had asked her. Kylaris had looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "There are things hidden deep within you, memories of a time long past. They are buried, Rax, and you must remember them." But before he could ask her to explain further, the battle had called them back. There was no time for answers. The doors to the war room opened, and Rax turned to see Kylaris entering, her armor gleaming in the dim light. She was as cold and distant as ever, yet there was something different in her eyes now. It was as if she were seeing him for the first time. She seemed troubled, and that troubled Rax more than anything else. "Captain," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I need you to lead a reconnaissance mission. We've received reports of enemy forces gathering at the southern border. We need to know what we're up against before we can strike again." Rax nodded. "Understood. I'll gather my team." But before he could leave, Kylaris stepped closer. "There is something else you must know," she said quietly. "You are not who you think you are." Rax frowned, his mind racing. "What are you talking about?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she glanced around as if making sure no one was listening. Then, in a low voice, she said, "You are the one I lost, the one they took from me." Rax blinked in confusion. "What are you saying?" Kylaris took a deep breath as if steeling herself for something painful. "Rax, you were once my consort, a human who came from Earth, just like the soldiers you lead now. But you were taken from me when I was young. The memories we shared, our bond, was erased. You were sent to Earth, where you grew up without knowing your true heritage." Rax took a step back, his mind spinning. "No, that's impossible. I would remember." "You wouldn't," she replied softly. "They erased your memories. They wiped everything clean, leaving only the warrior you are now. But I remember you, Rax. I remember us." Rax felt like the ground was slipping beneath him. His whole world was crumbling, and he didn't know how to hold it together. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why didn't you say anything?" Kylaris looked down, her gaze distant. "Because I didn't want you to remember. I was afraid of what would happen if you did. But now I realize that the only way to stop this war is to unlock the truth. And for that, we need you to remember." Rax shook his head, trying to process everything she had said. "So, what do we do now?" Kylaris hesitated before answering. "We must find the key to unlocking your memories. There is an ancient artifact hidden in the ruins of the temple at the heart of Xiron. It holds the power to restore your lost memories. But it's not easy to find. The temple has been abandoned for centuries, and the path to it is dangerous." Rax clenched his fists. "If there's a chance it will help us win this war, I'll do whatever it takes." Kylaris nodded, her expression hardening. "Then we leave at dawn. Prepare yourself, Captain." The next morning, Rax and Kylaris set out on their journey to the temple. The path was treacherous, winding through dense forests and across rocky terrain. It was the kind of mission that only the bravest would dare undertake. As they traveled, Rax couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. His past, his connection to Kylaris, everything felt like it was slipping through his fingers. But there was no time to dwell on it. They had a mission to complete. After hours of travel, they finally arrived at the entrance to the ancient temple. The stone doors were covered in intricate carvings, worn with age but still beautiful. Kylaris stepped forward, placing her hand on the stone. It was warm to the touch, and a soft hum filled the air. The doors slowly creaked open, revealing a dark hallway leading deep into the temple. Rax felt a chill run down his spine as they entered. The air inside was thick with dust, the weight of centuries pressing down on them. But despite the eerie atmosphere, Rax felt a strange pull, as if something was calling to him. The deeper they went, the more Rax's mind began to race. Was this the moment when everything would change? Would he remember who he truly was? Would he finally understand the connection he had with Kylaris? Finally, they reached the heart of the temple. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on it lay a crystal, glowing with an otherworldly light. Kylaris stepped forward, her expression serious. "This is it, Rax. This is the key to unlocking your memories." Rax hesitated. "But how do we use it?" Kylaris looked at him, her eyes softening for a moment. "You must touch it, Rax. You must let the memories come back to you." Rax took a deep breath and stepped forward. As his hand touched the crystal, a wave of energy surged through him. His vision blurred, and he felt as though he were falling into a deep, endless void. Suddenly, memories began to flood his mind, memories of a time long forgotten. He saw himself standing beside Kylaris, both of them young and happy, their bond unbreakable. He saw battles fought, kingdoms conquered, and moments of love shared between them. But then, the memories changed. There was pain, betrayal, his memories being ripped away from him. He saw the faces of the ones who had erased him, who had sent him to Earth, and he understood. Rax fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the flood of memories. The pain, the loss, the love. It was all too much to bear. But through it all, one thing became clear. He was not just a soldier. He was the lost consort of the Queen, the one she had loved, and the one she had lost. Tears filled his eyes as he looked up at Kylaris. "I remember now. I remember everything." Kylaris knelt beside him, her voice trembling. "I never wanted you to forget, Rax. I never wanted you to be lost to me." Rax reached out, taking her hand. "We've both lost so much, but we still have each other." And as the memories settled into place, a new bond formed between them, stronger than ever before. The war was far from over, but now Rax and Kylaris were united not just as allies, but as something more. Together they would face whatever came next, and they would fight to reclaim their past and their future. The air was thick with the scent of rain and dust as Rax and Queen Kylaris stood together in the ancient temple. The echoes of their footsteps reverberated through the vast, hollow space. Rax could still feel the powerful surge of memories coursing through his veins, the overwhelming flood of images and emotions that had resurfaced. He had remembered who he was, and with that memory came the realization of everything he had lost. The crystal on the pedestal glowed softly, its light illuminating the dark chamber. Rax stood up slowly, wiping the sweat from his brow. He felt as though he had just woken up from a long, painful dream. His connection to Kylaris was clearer now, stronger than ever before. It was as if their past, their bond, had been waiting for this moment to be rediscovered. Kylaris, too, seemed different. The weight of the years and the responsibilities of ruling had always made her distant and cold, but now there was something more vulnerable in her eyes. She looked at Rax with a mixture of longing and sadness, as if the memories they had shared were both a blessing and a curse. "You remember everything," she said softly, her voice filled with emotion. Rax nodded. I remember you, Kylaris. I remember us. For a long moment, they simply stood there, their eyes locked in a silent understanding. The bond they shared was more than just the memories of a lost past. It was something deeper, something that transcended time and space. But the world outside the temple was not as peaceful as the one inside. The war was still raging, and the enemy was not waiting for Rax and Kylaris to rediscover their past. The battle for Xiron was far from over. We need to return to the palace, Kylaris said, breaking the silence. The enemy forces are closing in. We cannot afford to waste any more time. Rax nodded, his mind focused on the task at hand. The memories of their past had given him strength, but now they had to fight for the future. He had always been a soldier, but now he was something more. He was the queen's consort, her equal in this fight. The journey back to the palace was long and tense. As they traveled through the dense forests and across the rocky plains, the reality of the war settled heavily on them both. Xiron was a beautiful planet, full of lush landscapes and vibrant cities, but the scars of war were everywhere. The enemy forces had ravaged much of the planet, and the once thriving cities now lay in ruins. Rax couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt as he looked at the destruction. This was his home now, his new life. And yet, it was also the home of Kylaris, a ruler who had watched her kingdom crumble beneath the weight of the conflict. Her people had suffered, and he couldn't help but feel responsible for some of that pain. He had come to Xiron as an ally, but now, with his memories restored, he realized that he was much more than that. He was her partner in this fight, and it was his duty to stand by her, no matter what. As they neared the palace, they could see the enemy's forces gathering on the horizon. The enemy had learned of their mission and were ready to strike. Time for preparation was over. Inside the palace, the situation was dire. The war council had gathered, and Kylaris quickly took her place at the head of the table. Rax stood beside her, a silent but powerful presence. The room was filled with tense murmurs as the leaders of the various factions discussed their next move. We don't have much time, Kylaris said, her voice steady. The enemy will be here within hours. We need a plan, and we need it now. Rax stepped forward. We'll need to strike first. If we let them set the terms of the battle, we lose. The room fell silent as the generals and advisors looked at Rax. They had never seen him speak with such authority before, but it was clear that he had changed. His memories had returned, and with them, a new sense of purpose. We know their weaknesses, Rax continued. We can use their overconfidence against them. We hit their supply lines, cripple their communications, and then we move in for the final strike. Kylaris nodded. Prepare your forces, Captain. We'll follow your lead. As the war council dispersed and the preparations for battle began, Rax and Kylaris stood alone in the war room. There was no time for more words, no time for reflection. The battle was coming, and they had to be ready. The night before the battle, Rax found himself standing on the palace balcony looking out at the stars. The cool night air brushed against his skin, but his mind was on fire. The memories of his past, the bond he shared with Kylaris, the pain of everything that had been lost. It all weighed heavily on him. But there was no time for regret. They had a war to win. A soft voice behind him broke the silence. You're thinking about the past again. Rax turned to see Kylaris standing in the doorway, her silver armor gleaming in the moonlight. She had always been a commanding presence, but tonight she seemed different. There was something vulnerable in her eyes, something that made Rax's heart tighten. I'm thinking about the future, he said quietly. Kylaris stepped forward, her gaze meeting his. We have no future unless we win this war. If we fail, everything we've fought for, everything we've lost. It will all be for nothing. Rax nodded. We'll win. We have to. For a moment, they stood together in silence, the weight of the world pressing down on them. Then, Rax reached out and took her hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant everything. In that moment, they were no longer just allies or rulers. They were partners, bound by a shared past and a shared future. We'll win, Rax said again, this time with more conviction. Together. Kylara squeezed his hand, her gaze softening. Together. The next day, the battle began. The skies were filled with the roar of fighter ships as they soared through the air, engaging the enemy in a deadly dance. The ground shook as explosions rocked the city, and the sound of gunfire and shouting filled the streets. Rax and Kylaris led their forces with unyielding determination, their bond giving them the strength to face the overwhelming odds. Rax moved through the chaos, his soldiers following his every command. He had fought in many battles, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting the future, about reclaiming everything that had been lost. Kylaris was with him every step of the way. She led her own forces with unmatched skill, her every move calculated and precise. Her leadership was what had kept Xiron together for so long, and today she would fight to keep it that way. The enemy forces were relentless, but Rax and Kylaris were unstoppable. They fought with a fury that came from a place deeper than just strategy. It was the fire of a love long lost and now rekindled. The bond they shared, the memories that had been restored, gave them the strength to push forward when all seemed lost. As the battle raged on, Rax found himself facing the leader of the enemy forces. It was a fierce confrontation, but Rax's training, combined with the strength of his memories and his bond with Kylaris, gave him the upper hand. With a final, decisive strike, he defeated the enemy leader, sending the remaining forces into retreat. The victory was hard won, but it was theirs. The battle for Xiron had been fought, and it had been won. The days following the battle were filled with both relief and sorrow. The war was over, but the cost had been high. Xiron was left in ruins, its people scarred by the conflict. But there was hope now, a hope that had been born from the ashes of destruction. Rax and Kylaris stood together in the ruined palace, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape. "It's over," Kylaris said softly, her voice filled with both sadness and triumph. "It's just the beginning," Rax replied. Together they had reclaimed their past, their future, and their kingdom. And together they would rebuild. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Rax and Kylaris stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next.